It's now my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Monique Foster, President of the Canadian Hispanic Congress. Con mucho gusto, recibimos a la señora Monique Foster, Presidenta del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I am Monique Forster, President of the Canadian Hispanic Congress. If you are a woman, or you have a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, or a friend who is a woman, then the concept of women empowerment is with all certainty an important one for you. The concept of women empowerment was coined and became a buzzword following the 1995 Women's World Conference in Beijing as a means of encapsulating the proposed actions to increase participation of women in decision-making processes and access to power. Over time, the term empowerment has gained a new dimension. It now encompasses the process of recovery of women's personal dignity and their survival in a world where the dominant discourse remains unchanged, as it continues to largely place women outside of the decision-making spheres. The key element is the term empowerment. And it's the word power contained therein. And at its essence is the strategy that involves men and women working together to confront gender inequality, working together on the transformation of economic and political structures that determine the daily lives of disadvantaged people. Women are disadvantaged people. Numbers and current data assembled show women as a disadvantaged population, and political representation of women in decision-making spaces is too low to bring about the changes needed to recreate structures in a manner that can bring us into the age of sustainable development. Objectively speaking, the survival and success of any organization, whether it's private industry or anywhere else, is dependent upon the substantial input from all its members. Not having women's full input and participation within our economic and social governmental structures has indeed kept society in a situation of disadvantage. Women currently represent 1/2 of the world's population. Sustainability can only be attained when men and women from their own strategic positions, such as ourselves, encourage and support structural changes that support and encourage full access and allow for the full contribution from women, the largest marginalized group. Today, we are delighted to have our guests share with us the ways in which they contribute, encourage, and support change from their very own strategic positions. Today, we welcome our guests. Honoring us with their presence, we welcome Mr. Carlos Játiva Naranjo, Ambassador of Ecuador to Canada, and in alphabetical order, Ms. Soraya Martinez Ferrada, Member of Canadian Parliament, Ms. Judy Grove, Member of Canadian Parliament, Ms. Julie Zurovich, Member of Canadian Parliament, and Mr. Eddie Montalban, Consul of Ecuador in Toronto. A warm welcome also to each of our fellow Canadian Hispanic Congress directors who are with us today, including Elvira Sanchez de Malitsky, founder and first president of the Canadian Hispanic Congress, Rosario Gomez, Director of Education, Eldi Ampuero, past president of the Canadian Hispanic Congress. Without exception, we welcome all CHC directors present today. A warm welcome also to our friends of the press. I see Soraya Garcia Moreno with us today. Most of all, we thank the public who inspire us with their support to continue with our work. To everyone joining us virtually from various parts of the world, welcome to all of you. Thank you for making time for us today. We especially want to thank you. And a special thanks goes to our colleague, Carlos Ibarra of the Ibero-American University, the host and technical director of this event. Si usted es mujer o tiene una madre, una esposa, una hija, una hermana o una amiga, entonces el concepto de empoderamiento de la mujer es con toda seguridad un tema importante para usted. El concepto del empoderamiento de la mujer se acuñó y se convirtió en una palabra de moda tras la Conferencia Mundial de la Mujer, celebrada en Pekín en 1995, como medio para encapsular las acciones propuestas para aumentar la participación de las mujeres en los procesos de toma de decisiones y el acceso al poder. Con el tiempo, el término empoderamiento ha adquirido una nueva dimensión. Ahora abarca el proceso de recuperación de la dignidad personal de la mujer y su supervivencia en el mundo en el que el discurso dominante no ha cambiado, ya que en gran medida la mujer sigue situada fuera de las esferas de decisión. El elemento clave dentro del término empoderamiento es la palabra poder, que contiene y cuya esencia es la estrategia que implica el trabajo conjunto de hombres y mujeres para hacer frente a la desigualdad de género, trabajando juntos para la transformación de las estructuras económicas y políticas que determinan la vida cotidiana de las personas desfavorecidas, y el resto, en este caso, las mujeres. Tenemos que reconocer que las mujeres son personas desfavorecidas. Las cifras y datos actuales muestran que las mujeres, como una población desfavorecida, y la representación política de las mujeres en los espacios de toma de decisiones es demasiado baja como para provocar los cambios necesarios, para recrear las estructuras de manera que podamos entrar en la era del desarrollo sostenible. Objetivamente, la supervivencia y el éxito de cualquier organización dependen de la aportación sustancial de todos sus miembros. Y nuestras estructuras económicas y sociales efectivamente ponen a la mujer en una situación de desventaja. De acuerdo con las cifras actuales, las mujeres representan la mitad de la población mundial. La sostenibilidad solo puede alcanzarse si los hombres y las mujeres, desde sus propias posiciones estratégicas, fomentan y apoyan los cambios estructurales, que apoyan y fomentan el acceso y la contribución plenos de las mujeres, que constituyen el grupo marginado más numeroso. Hoy nos complace invitar a nuestros invitados a compartir con nosotros las formas en que ellos contribuyen, fomentan y apoyan el cambio desde sus propias posiciones estratégicas. Nos honran hoy con su presencia y damos la bienvenida al señor Carlos Játiva Naranjo, embajador del Ecuador en Canadá, y en orden alfabético, la señora Soraya Martínez Ferrada, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, la señora Judy Scrow, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, la señora Julie Zerovich, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, y el señor Eddie Montalbán, cónsul del Ecuador en Toronto. Una calurosa bienvenida también para cada uno de nuestros compañeros, directores del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense que nos acompañan hoy, entre ellos Elvira Sánchez de Maliski, fundadora y primera presidenta del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense, Rosario Gómez, directora de Educación, Eli Ampuero, presidente anterior, y sin excepción todos los directores del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense presentes hoy. A nuestra bienvenida a nuestros amigos de la prensa, como Soraya García Moreno, y a todas las personas que nos acompañan virtualmente desde varios puntos en el mundo. Bienvenidos todos y muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Hoy queremos agradecer especialmente a nuestro colega, el señor Carlos Ibarra, de la Universidad Iberoamericana de México, y nuestro anfitrión de hoy, y también nuestro director técnico de este evento. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Monique, for your opening remarks. It is now my honor to welcome His Excellency Carlos Játiva Naranjo, Ecuador's ambassador to Canada. Prior to his current postings as Ecuador ambassador to Canada, Ambassador Játiva Naranjo was the ambassador and permanent representative of Ecuador to the Organization of American States, where he served in various capacities, including his tenure as chairman of the Working Group for the Reform of the Permanent Council of the OAS. Ambassador Játiva's long diplomatic career includes his service as ambassador to the United States, Sweden, France, the Caribbean, and Austria. Adelante, Su Excelencia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was asked to deliver my remarks in English, so I'll do it in English, and perhaps I'll give a brief summary if it's not too long in Spanish. First of all, greetings to all and a word of thanks, a special thanks to Madam Monica Forster for this kind invitation to attend this online gathering, all the more fitting in this month of November, during which we celebrate the Hispanic heritage. Now, we've been called to speak on the empowerment of women, which is, in my view, and not only my view, but in my government's view, vital for the well-being of all our peoples and the stability even of our nations. In my previous tenure as permanent representative of Ecuador to the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., together on a personal basis with my wife, we confronted COVID. Until then, an unknown sickness, later pandemic, that exposed us to unthinkable challenges for which we were ill or not prepared at all, and that both as individual and as government officials. In any event, we adapted as nations, and so did the OAS's different bodies, such as the Permanent Council, the Inter-American Commission on Women, and the SECPI, the Spanish acronym for the follow-up mechanism of the Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women. Together with member states, their leaders raised continuously all the issues on the status of women throughout the hemisphere. For our part, we were involved in discussions and negotiations related to women issues and reaffirmation of Ecuador's steadfast support for the activities undertaken by those mechanisms and others at the regional and world level. As an example, I would mention the preparation of the workshop addressed to women electoral candidates on the occasion of the general elections in February 2021. The OAS also assisted us in elaborating the new electoral code that typifies political violence as a crime, stipulates that women will lead 50% of the multi-person lists, and mandates that beginning with the 2025 election, all presidential tickets must be composed by a man and a woman. Just as it is indisputable that women represent the fundamental pillar of the family in all its forms, we must not overlook their essential role in reducing inequality and poverty, as well as generating wealth. And yet, a considerable proportion of women continue working in unequal conditions, gain less than their male counterparts for equivalent jobs, and have suffered a differentiated impact during and after COVID. This has led to a setback in their economic opportunities, threatens to reverse years of progress, and even widen further the gap with men. More worrisome yet, significant growth in violence resulting ultimately in death against women and girls has been one of the most alarming and somber features of the COVID era, during which their vulnerability increased by living with their aggressors. Even if crime is generally decreased over that period of time, cases of domestic violence, sexual abuse, attempted homicides and femicides were on the rise. Calls to 911 and other emergency services were up by 80%. Not even cyberspace escaped the malicious trend of sexual violence. Thus, the amendments to the penal code that typifies the latter as a crime. Paradoxically, quarantines put their lives and physical integrity at risk. As head of households, they had to continue working outside their homes in order to satisfy living needs and ensure food security for their families. Many faced abusive employers who threatened them with unlawful dismissal. The pandemic also raised attention on the so-called care economy. Care was already one of the main issues that was brought at the time. Care was construed as being something of an obstacle, in fact, to women's advancement in the economy and to the achievement of greater equality. On the other hand, care must be recognized as an investment. Shared responsibility must be understood as a generator of economic activity, delivering quality professional jobs, increasing the participation of men in families beyond their traditional role as economic providers, strengthening families by a more equitable distribution of care, allowing the implementation of care standards and regulations to provide security, and promoting a collective vision and responsibility for economic development and social cohesion. During the pandemic, 1 in 4 women in senior positions considered reducing their responsibilities, taking a leave of absence, or abandoning the workforce altogether. They were entrusted with care responsibilities that proved difficult to cope due to the overload of unpaid household work. However, these so-called decisions have had impacts that go beyond those relating to their empowerment and have affected the economic slowdown of our economies. The Human Rights Secretariat, the institution in Ecuador in charge of the advancement of the women's rights, together with 22 other public entities, leads the implementation of the comprehensive organic law for the prevention and eradication of violence against women. 45 comprehensive protection services have been established, which include psychological, social, and legal advice to restore the rights of girls, adolescents, and women subject to gender violence. Likewise, it has provided for the opening of violence centers, offering victims and their dependents protection in a safe environment. The aim is to install at least 1 center in each of the 24 provinces that compose Ecuador by 2025. As of next month, the Secretariat, which I was referring to, will become the Ministry of Human Rights and Women Issues. For its part, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as the governing body for the rights of people and human mobility, offers priority attention to migrant and refugee women. A draft law, and if I could just add to that, as you know, Ecuador is the country that has received the greatest amount, proportionally speaking, of Venezuelan migrants following the crisis in that country. There are more than 500,000 Venezuelans now in Ecuador. And as I said, proportionately speaking, it is the country that has most received our brothers and sisters from Venezuela. A draft law to promote violent economy will be examined by the National Assembly next week. This document aims to strengthen, promote, guarantee, and ensure equality for women. It includes compensation mechanisms for women victims of violence or in vulnerable situations. Tax incentives are envisaged to promote personal, economic, social, and their labor independence. Moreover, efforts are deployed to ensure the same opportunities for women in the public service. A woman currently leads one of the 5 branches of government. An Afro-descendant one heads the State Attorney General's office. She's been distinguished internationally for her work fighting against corruption. 43% of the members of the National Assembly are women. In the private sector, 3 out of 10 women hold management roles. And I would add that almost 70% of micro and small enterprises are headed by women. In accordance with UN Sustainable Development Goal 5, to which Madame Foster referred to, Ecuador is committed to promoting women's leadership in all its diversity as a cross-cutting state policy, aware that their participation in all activities is essential for building a better future. In conclusion, I believe that we should all acknowledge that the role of women has changed and continues to change the world. We should therefore end their exclusion. A better world depends on addressing the imbalances in the representation and participation of women in equal footing than men. The time to act is now. I therefore welcome this opportunity to speak and encourage you to pursue our common struggle for the recognition of the rights of women, as there is still a long path to go in order to achieve inclusive, equitable, and safe societies in their favor and in favor of all. Thank you very much. Creo que no voy a hablar en español porque me excedí un poco, pero en todo caso creo que sí se me entendió. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your presentation.
Ahora quiero tomar un momentito para darle la bienvenida y expresar mi agradecimiento sincero a la primera ministra Marisol Nieto, por que nos acompaña también hoy. Muchísimas gracias y bienvenida. Es realmente un honor tenerle aquí.
Sí, muchas gracias, solo que no soy primera ministra, soy ministra del Servicio Exterior y estamos en la embajada con el embajador y los demás colegas en Ottawa. Gracias, señora Foster.
Y si se me permite,
gracias a usted.
Si me permite, señora Foster, también añadir que justamente Marisol, que es una gran promotora de los derechos de la mujer y que es un poco el reflejo de lo que son las conquistas de la mujer en el servicio exterior ecuatoriano, va a prepararse a fines de año otro seminario sobre justamente los derechos de la mujer. Entonces le informaremos a usted de esa fecha y de todos los colegas que están participando.
Muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias.
We are now honored to welcome the Honorable Judy Escrow, member of the Canadian Parliament. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Ms. Forster. Thank you so much for hosting this event. It is so encouraging to continue to see such a movement when it comes on behalf of women. My dear friend Elvira, Ambassador, it's great to see all of you here. And I have to share with you that I've just returned from a Hands Around the World rally on Yonge Street here in Toronto on behalf of the Iranian women that are, just like many here on this call, standing up for their rights, standing up for freedom and democracy, and standing up to be counted and to get the kind of freedom that clearly we enjoy in Canada, that we would like to see enjoyed around the world. And so your conference is very appropriate at this particular time, because I believe it is a time where women around the world, not just the Latin American or the Iranian, that are all need to be empowered and encouraged to stand up for their rights, but not only stand up for their rights, to participate even more so in the economic opportunities that there are. Some of the things that I'm very proud of in Canada, when we talk about empowering women, you can empower women, but if you don't provide the social net, childcare, the leave for when their parents get sick, the kinds of support systems that we are doing in Canada, I'm immensely proud of all of that. But without that, you hold women back, because at the end of the day, if you've got your children that you have a responsibility for, and you don't have a safe place for your children to be, it makes it very difficult. And I think around the world, and speaking specifically in Canada, it's been something that has held back thousands and thousands or millions of women from achieving the kind of goals and the opportunity that we could have. So empowering women should be the goal for all of us, because women getting themselves into entrepreneurship, we see it more and more, where women are getting the kinds of support they need, certainly from our government. The trade minister was at our committee on Friday, Minister Ng, and talked about the entrepreneurship, the women's empowerment movement around the world that she is dealing with, and all of the countries that she's visiting as trade ministers. She's meeting with women's organizations to say, how do we help? How do we empower you? How do we encourage your entrepreneurship opportunities? If 50% of the population is women, 50% of those women, all of those women need to have opportunity. That means opportunity to grow, to contribute to the economy, and to do all the things that they've been held back from for so many years. And so I really think that we're going into a decade where women are going to feel empowered and mobilized to be the maximum that they want to be. But in order for that to happen, as a society, we have to have the backup plan for women to be able to be free to do that. And, you know, I know so many wonderful, strong, immensely competent Latin American women that just so much want to be able to achieve their goals. And the conference that you're having today, I think it's just one more step in the whole empowerment of women and women in Latin America. Now, whether those women are in Canada or in Ecuador or wherever they are, I think we should be doing everything we possibly can to see that that particular individual, that female, gets that opportunity to contribute to society that she very much wants to. So we need to fight for those things that matter, the childcare, the parental leaves, the kind of support systems that will allow women to be able to achieve their ultimate goal. And I have to say, I'm super proud of our government and what the steps that have been made and that we will continue to make along with my colleagues. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. You have several of my colleagues on the conference call this afternoon that will also be contributing and outlining some of the direction that we're going in. But Ambassador, thank you for those comments that you made. They were very fruitful to listen to them. I have worked with Elvira for many, many, many years. Neither one of us are going to talk about how many years, but it's been many years. And there's so much more to do, and that we need to continue to do that. But I believe that the next decade is going to be the decade where women finally become truly liberated, because the world needs us. And there's lots for us to offer. So let's make sure that we continue to have conferences like this and that we move forward so that women have the freedom to achieve their dreams and the goals, and they contribute to the economy big time. So thank you, Ms. Forster, for the invitation to be here, and God bless all of you. And I will close my comments now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Esbro.
I cannot tell you how thrilled we are every time we have the pleasure and the honor of having you here. You are recognized in our community, and you are your work is important, and we always want to continue having opportunities to have you share your views here on behalf of women everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It is now our great honor to welcome the Honorable Soraya Martinez Ferrada, Member of Canadian Parliament. Soraya Martinez Ferrada was first elected as a member of the Parliament for Hochelaga in 2019. Since 2021 and her re-election, she has been Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion. Ms. Martinez Ferrada previously served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. She created the very first cultural and socio-professional integration program at Tohu, a unique example of sustainable development in Montreal. Con mucho gusto le invitamos entonces a tomar la palabra.
Aló, buenas tardes. Muchas gracias por la presentación. Primeramente, gracias Monique Foster que me hayas invitado a este evento virtual. Es realmente un placer estar aquí con ustedes. Un saludo en particular a mi colega del Parlamento, Judy Srow. Siempre es un placer verla en el lobby del Parlamento, no tan solo ahí, pero también aquí compartiendo con ustedes, una mujer muy conocida y muy respetada en el Parlamento. Muchas gracias, Yuri, por estar aquí también. Me gustaría empezar mi discurso hablando un poco de el avance que las mujeres han tenido dentro de estos décadas. Como ustedes saben, los logros que hemos tenido a través de la historia empezaron hace muchos años atrás, logrando tener el voto femenino. Nos peleamos muchos años solamente para poder, como mujeres, ser reconocido por fin, no tan solo como una persona, pero como una mujer en el derecho de definición de la ley. Y eso nos parece ser mucho tiempo atrás, pero si ustedes se acuerdan, solo el voto aquí en Montreal, las mujeres pudieron votar en el gobierno del municipio en los años 70. Antes de eso, las mujeres no podían votar en el municipio, sino que solamente los hombres, que eran los hombres propietarios. Después logramos muchos otros logros que fueron la igualdad de género en la educación, en el empleo. Fue una lucha de la lucha de la igualdad en los años 60, 70, 80. Y hemos recorrido, claro, mucho camino, pero todavía ese camino no se ha logrado en otras partes del mundo, por supuesto. Hoy debemos luchar por cambiar las percepciones y los estereotipos de las mujeres. Ahora, logramos tener derecho, logramos tener igualdad, pero hoy día tenemos que luchar contra el fenómeno de la misoginia. Tenemos que pelearnos contra todavía el estereotipo femenino en el trabajo, en la sociedad. Últimamente, no sé si estuvieron al tanto, yo me paré en el Parlamento para denunciar el jefe del Partido Conservador que ha utilizado deliberadamente videos para atraer los movimientos online misóginos de extrema derecha. Una, una, eh, una táctica que salía, un comportamiento muy sutil, pero muy doloroso y muy peligroso para el estatus y el derecho de la mujer. Y yo creo que había que denunciarlo y hay que seguir denunciando esas prácticas que son totalmente sin ningún respeto para la mujer en la sociedad hoy día. Y esta lucha que tenemos que seguir teniendo es una lucha en la que nos vean como un igual. ¿Cuántas veces mujeres han estado en reuniones con muchos hombres? ¿Ah? ¿Cuántas veces mujeres han compartido una idea y esa idea no ha sido recibida de la misma manera que si un hombre la hubiese presentado? A veces el hombre presenta la idea y todo el mundo, sí, muy buena idea, pero usted lo dijo hace una hora atrás. Muchas veces las mujeres, entonces, ese valor, el valor que la voz femenina tiene, esa es una de las luchas que tenemos que ahora empezar y seguir adelante. La pandemia tuvo muchos efectos, como ustedes lo saben, los efectos de la pandemia y cada vez que han ido historias y guerras y movimientos muy fuertes en la sociedad, las mujeres han sido siempre las primeras que han sido impactadas por esos cambios, que sea a nivel económico, social, físico, psicológico. Durante la pandemia muchas mujeres estuvieron viviendo en el mismo techo de hombres abusivos sin tener la posibilidad de salir a ninguna parte. La pandemia hizo que muchas mujeres perdieron su empleo. Si vemos entre marzo 2020 y febrero 2021, las mujeres representaron 53% de las pérdidas de empleo. Entonces, muchas de las mujeres nos encontramos frente a una situación de las mujeres que daban mucho menos el empleo y un paso hacia atrás importante. Y eso fue una de las cosas que, bueno, Yuri lo dijo en delante, nuestro gobierno se ateló a trabajar, a poner en algunas políticas públicas, programas para justamente ayudar a las mujeres, entre otras cosas, volver al trabajar. Hablamos, Yuri habló del trabajo de ir a buscar programas para ayudar a las madres a poder tener servicios de educación y guarderías para sus hijos, que no era que no es la misma oferta en todas partes de Canadá. La provincia donde yo vivo, Quebec, es mucho más, tiene un programa de educación infantil muy importante, pero no es el caso de todas las otras provincias. So I will say a few words in English around our government. Since my election as an MP for the riding of Hochelaga, and Judy said this earlier, I mean, we're so proud to be in a government that has taken equity and support the empowerment of women in this country as a priority, and not only as a priority, but as a sense of being. I remember one of the reasons that I got involved in the Liberal Party in 2015 was at that time there was a lot of conversations around the right to abortion and being discussed about something that should be discussed again. And actually, that was one of the main reasons I got involved in politics in 2015, because I believe in the values of women and their rights, and it's something that we cherish very much in this country. The other thing that I think
Looks like
is
we're frozen for a minute there.
Oh, sorry. Is that okay now? Hopefully
Yes.
it's okay. So one of the other things that I think this government has done, and it's not only to work on the rights of women, but on the values of female leadership in the professional work, particularly in politics. One of the things that our government did in 2015 and the prime minister did was name a cabinet, parity of cabinet. So it was the first time that ever, and a lot of other countries actually took example of that. So I think we're very proud of that. In 2018, we passed an historic pay equity legislation that I think was important. Again, to be responsible, but also to show to the private sector and to other countries that this is possible and that we can have a legislation that protects the equity of pay for women. We also added a gender identity and expression as a ground for protection in the Canadian Human Rights Act, because as you know, it's not something that was there, and we've been committed to not only the LGBTQ community, but the gender identity respect of how people want to see themselves. In the fight against COVID-19, we have been recognized as a country with the most gender responsive recovery plan. And Judy talked about this earlier. We have set up $100 million fund, a feminist response and recovery fund, to support projects and programs to accelerate progress on gender equality. And the women's entrepreneur, of course, that has been targeted with the women's entrepreneurship strategy, which is $15 million in addition funding that has been released. Because we know that there is a systemic discrimination that women, especially in entrepreneurship, and can be a part of, and we have to make sure that as a government we have programs to that targets women in particular and support the women to develop their own business and leadership. It's been changing elements on the system, which allows women to participate fully in the economic, social, and democratic life of Canada. For example, we make sure that in every nomination that we do in institutions across the country, that we have a lens, a feminist lens and diversity lens, to make sure that in the decision power, and at the table of decisions, we have more women that are nominated on boards, on commissions, on committee. And I think it's a part of making sure that women are not only influencing decisions, but actually taking part of the decision making in this country. Because again, it's one thing to fight rights and make sure that women's rights are respected, not only in Canada, but all over the world, but it's making sure that women actually participate in the positions of strategic leadership and decision making. So, and I would say something about, and this is a conversation I had yesterday with young women that were asking me, what would be a recommendation that would do to women wanted to go into politics, wanted to either do you know, a new business or whatever action that you want to do? I would say the first thing I said when I went into politics, it was not something that I had planned. So I said to people that I would do bungee jumping, and it's actually making sure that you're scared, your heart is going 100 miles an hour, but take it all in, the fear, the scare, the anxiety, and just do it anyway. And just jump and do it and make sure that you take the space that you deserve in this country, in your community, in the boards that you want to be a part of, in the community organizations you want to be a part. And don't be scared, just make the call and make yourself known to take the space in those leadership decision-making spaces. So on that, I will thank you again for your this conversation and taking the time to hear what I had to say.
Muchísimas gracias, diputada Martínez Ferrada. We now have the honor of welcoming the Honorable Julie Serovich, Member of Canadian Parliament.
Hola, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
we hear you
perfect.
fine.
Oh, thanks so much, Monique. Thanks for saying so. Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure for me to be here at the 11th Conference for Pro-Empowerment of Women. And I want to say how happy I am to also be joined by two female colleagues that I absolutely adore. You know, Judy Scrow, who is former city councillor, an MP, a former minister, and right now a mentor to so many women in politics and beyond politics, and to my good friend Soraya Martinez Ferrada. An inspiration for me, someone who teaches me about politics all the time. So it's a real honor to be with them at this virtual conference. So I'm glad I caught a little bit of what Soraya managed to say, because I probably would have said many of the same things. so I don't want to repeat what she has to say. I'll start off maybe by saying, you know, on October 19th of this year, I celebrated 7 years in politics. It's been the honor and privilege of my life to be able to serve the amazing people in my riding of Davenport. And I'll tell you, this is where I'm at right now. I'm on my third event of the day, and so I still have 4 more to go. But there is, I'm in the northern part of the riding where we have a beautiful diversity of so many parts of Latin America here along St. Clair. And I'll tell you, when I was thinking on my 7th year anniversary in politics, I was thinking politics is still very much a men's game. You know, we've made a lot of progress in Canada and by deliberate effort by our federal government, in particular since 2015. And I'm really very proud of the efforts that we have made. And I know that Judy and Soraya would have mentioned our gender equity, both in the House of Commons and in Senate. I know they would have mentioned the dollars we put towards women's entrepreneurship, the huge dollars we've put around gender-based violence, the national childcare program we have in place right now, the feminist foreign policy, the monies that we give to international development agencies. It's very much skewed and targeted towards women and not so much microloans, but really supporting women in their communities, because we know if you give $1 to women in a community, they are going to put it towards education and healthcare and the economy. And so we've really made great strides at the national level in terms of really focusing on gender equality and really trying to help women who are trying to start businesses, who are trying to be entrepreneurs, and really tackling some of the things that have been hindering us, like gender-based violence. And I know Soraya had mentioned the $100 million Feminist Response and Recovery Fund. I know that there's also $100 million around just feminist policy in this country. The previous government had taken a lot of money away from feminist organizations, but you need to make sure that you are funding feminist organizations so that we can continue to have new policies that continue to support women's growth and gender equity overall. And so we have done that as well. What is my part 2 right here? So here's the thing I would say, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk to, but I know that if there were women who were going to ask for my advice today about how to move forward, how to get ahead, I would, and particularly within the Hispanic and Latin American community, here's what I would say. Education to me is critical at every stage of your life. I'm very big about continuous learning. I have signed up myself. Even though I have 2 degrees, I sign up for this online program called Masterclass so that I can keep up to date on maybe some of the new techniques and some of the new ideas that are out there. But I'm such a big believer in continuous education and really encouraging women to continue to educate themselves. Not only if you're deciding to attend an in-person college or university program, not only do you sort of advance your education skills as well as degrees, but it also creates really wonderful networks from which will help to serve you throughout your life and in achieving your ambitions and your dreams. The other thing I would say as women, and I would say we do this better, and over my 7 years, it's definitely gotten better, but I think we could even do even more at the national level, is supporting each other as women. You know, when we know a woman is running and we believe in that person, let's support that person. You might not have the money, but you might be able to promote, to give the time. But with all our hearts, if we are not supporting each other, then how is it that we're going to convince anyone else to support us? So I think we really need to continue to support each other, whether it's in business, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's in our political ambitions, in every way possible. I'd also say within the Hispanic community, I believe very strongly that we need to support the community to addressing some of the big issues we might have in our community, because the stronger our community is, the stronger we are individually. And so within the last few years, the 2 or 3 things that have come to my attention fairly consistently is, you know, needing a home for our seniors. And how is it that we can actually find a safe place for our seniors as they're getting older? How do we better support them? 2, how do we support our youth? You know, there were a few years where we were very worried about how many of our youth were graduating from high school, and for those that are graduating from high school, how many are actually moving on to post-secondary education? What more can we do to be encouraging our youth to develop their skills, to develop an attitude of lifelong learning in order to be able to achieve their dreams and their potential? So anything we can do to strengthen our communities as a whole, I think will help us individually as well. And I have a 3rd thing I wanted to say. And maybe this is, you know, Soraya sort of gave a story about, you know, a woman who said, you know, how do I get into politics? I'll tell you, when I was first elected in late 2015, I had a number of women come to me over the first 2 or 3 years I was in politics and ask me. I have far less women ask me now about politics, which I'm okay with, because I think that there's so many different ways that we can actually contribute to the world around us. And so many different ways that we can pursue our dreams. And so for me, what I say is, and maybe I know I mentioned this earlier, very much support the people that you believe in. Even in business, I spent about 20 years in business before I ran for politics. I'll tell you, even in the business world, I felt that we as women could support each other a lot more. And so maybe that's just the wise words that I would leave with all of you, is just support the people, support the women that you believe in. It's a way for us to be able to empower each other and to be able to become our best selves. So Monique and everyone who's organized this unbelievable 11th conference for pro empowerment of women, thank you for organizing this today. It's important for us to gather together. It's so important for us to be in community with each other. And I thank you for the invitation today. Muchísimas gracias.
Julie, thank you. We can't thank you enough. You are such a big part of our community, and we really appreciate all that you do. Thank you so much. I don't know if we had an opportunity to read your bio before you get started, but you know, it is extensive and it is full of accomplishments, and we appreciate you keeping an eye on, you know, what's happening to women at all times. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Gracias. Thank you.
Y ahora, cerrando con broche de oro, tenemos el gran gusto de recibir al señor cónsul del Ecuador en Toronto, el señor Eddie Montalbán. El señor Eddie Leonel Montalbán Carrión, cónsul del Ecuador en Toronto, es un diplomático de carrera ecuatoriano con una amplia experiencia internacional. Eddie ha estado sirviendo a la comunidad ecuatoriana en Toronto desde el año 2019. El señor cónsul tiene una amplia experiencia representando a los ecuatorianos en varias misiones diplomáticas, incluyendo su servicio como cónsul encargado de los asuntos consulares del Ecuador en Moscú.
Muchas gracias. ¿Sí me escuchan bien? Disculpe.
Sí.
Estimada Monique, muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes, perdón. Señor embajador, muy buenas tardes. Es un honor para mí estar presente con este distinguido grupo de personas. Si bien es cierto, el día de hoy hemos escuchado la intervención de ustedes, en lo que nos hacen mención a la situación de la mujer en los días actuales, pues podemos dar cuenta que el trabajo todavía tiene un largo camino que recorrer. Y indudablemente la presencia de la mujer en todas las actividades de la sociedad, en todas las actividades diarias, es fundamental. Su liderazgo es muy importante y por eso es necesario que se sigan haciendo todo lo necesario con la finalidad de que esta presencia se fortalezca en cada uno de los ámbitos en los cuales labora, en los cuales se desempeña. Las intervenciones que hemos escuchado el día de hoy pues dan clara muestra del trabajo que se está realizando. Sin embargo, pues quisiera hacer mención simplemente a una preocupación que tengo, pues al leer unos documentos elaborados por ONU Mujeres, uno puede darse cuenta que todavía el trabajo es muy poco para lo que se necesita. Es muy preocupante el hecho de saber que, según los informes preparados por la ONU, pues faltarían varios años para conseguir igualdad de género, para conseguir reducción de igualdades, de las desigualdades, perdón, y para lograr una paz, una justicia y instituciones sólidas en nuestros países. Creo que ahora, hablando directamente con nuestra comunidad aquí en Toronto, tenemos una oportunidad muy grande y voy a aprovechar este espacio para hacer un llamado para que esa representación de la mujer que tenemos aquí en Toronto también se haga presente en este acto cívico que se avecina para el Ecuador. La presencia de ustedes, como mencionaba, es muy importante para conseguir que la voz de los ecuatorianos, la voz de las mujeres en el exterior también sea escuchada en el Ecuador. Y eso se logra cuando tenemos más presencia de ella activa en estos procesos y en estos actos cívicos. Hago un llamado muy cordial, muy sincero a toda la comunidad ecuatoriana para que nos acompañen y puedan participar como una voz activa, como un actor fundamental para este proceso que se avecina el próximo mes de febrero. Quiero simplemente en este momento felicitar al Congreso Hispano-Canadiense por el haber organizado esta 11ª conferencia pro empoderamiento de la mujer. Son 5 años que llevo acá y cada año tengo ese grato honor de poder participar y ver que efectivamente con su trabajo convocan a que la presencia de la mujer se fortalezca cada día más, hacerles ver, hacerles tomar conciencia que es necesario que se involucren más en la toma de decisiones, que se involucren más en los procesos políticos, económicos, con la finalidad de que ese liderazgo se fundamente y demuestre efectivamente la valía en esos ámbitos en los cuales se desarrolla. Como hermana, como esposa, como madre, vemos esa valía que tiene la mujer. La diversidad es necesario fortalecerla, respetarla, y creo que con este tipo de eventos podemos lograrlo. El trabajo es arduo, como mencionaba, pero sin embargo confío en que primará siempre la razón para tomar las mejores decisiones y para que las mujeres tengan mayor presencia también en estos procesos importantes para la vida nacional. Muchas gracias, estimada Monique, por haberme invitado a esta conferencia. Espero que se siga trabajando en el fortalecimiento de la mujer, de la presencia de la mujer aquí en Canadá, y también que con sus eventos que se organicen, la presencia de la mujer ecuatoriana tenga mayor relevancia. A ustedes los felicito. Sé que aquí Monique Foster es ecuatoriana, la señora Elvit Sánchez de Malik también es ecuatoriana, a quienes felicito y extiendo un abrazo cordial. Sé que con su ejemplo aquí más mujeres tendrán esa presencia que se requiere en este país que les ha abierto las puertas. Muchas gracias a ustedes por haberme invitado, por escuchar esta breve intervención.
Mil gracias, Eddie. Muchísimas gracias.
Ahora escucharemos unas palabras de agradecimiento y despedida por parte de la señora Monique Forster, presidenta del CHS.
En nombre de mis compañeros del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense, hago presente mi agradecimiento sincero para todos nuestros invitados, Su Excelencia, el señor Carlos Játiva, embajador de Ecuador en Canadá, la señora Soraya Martínez Ferrada, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, la señora Judy Scrow, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, la señora Julie Zurovich, miembro del Parlamento canadiense, y el señor Eddie Montalbán, cónsul del Ecuador en Toronto. Mi agradecimiento para mis compañeros Elvira Sánchez de Malitsky, Rosario Gómez, Eddie Ampuero, a Alfredo Tirajero y todo el equipo del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense. Quiero hacer un agradecimiento especial para Hanan Salama y como también para Mirela Duque, que nos acompañan hoy. Es un placer tenerles aquí. Muchísimas gracias. Un agradecimiento especial para mi colega Carlos Ibarra por todo su esfuerzo y dedicación a este evento. Muchísimas gracias a nuestros amigos de la prensa y a nuestra comunidad, cuyo apoyo impulsa el trabajo del Congreso Hispano-Canadiense. Muchas gracias, amigos, por honrarnos con su presencia y su apoyo. On behalf of my colleagues at the Canadian Hispanic Congress, I offer my sincere thanks to our guests, His Excellency Mr. Carlos Játiva, Ambassador of Ecuador to Canada, Ms. Soraya Martínez Ferrada, Member of Canadian Parliament, Ms. Judy Scrow, Member of Canadian Parliament, Ms. Julie Zurovich, Member of the Canadian Parliament, and Mr. Eddie Montalban, Consul of Ecuador in Toronto. My thanks to my colleagues present today, Elvira Sánchez de Malisky, Rosario Gómez, Eddie Ampuero, Alfredo Tinajero, and the entire team at the Canadian Hispanic Congress. My special thanks to my colleague Carlos Ibarra for all his efforts and dedication to this event. A special thanks to Hanan Salama and Mirela Duque. I know that there are many wonderful women and everything that goes on, and I wanted to just before we part, I wanted to we didn't have an opportunity to speak about the work that Judy does. And maybe we'll take a moment just to make a quick introduction of the work of Judy's. We did not have an opportunity before her intervention, and so we will take a moment now.
Since 1999, Judy Esgro has been the Liberal MP for Humber River, Black Creek. Ms. Esgro's work has been focused in the advancement of an agenda that is progressive and respectful of human rights, equality, and religious freedom. In Parliament, MP Esgro developed national solutions to local problems. As chair of the Prime Minister's Task Force on Urban Issues, she shaped policy on social housing, the creation of the gas tax rebate, and the promotion of human rights and religious freedoms. As Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, MP Esgro championed family reunification and promoted systemic fairness. Welcome, Ms. Esgro.
Thank you very much, but I have to say, Ms. Ford, it was very kind of you to do that, but it was totally unnecessary. I do what I do because that's what I'm supposed to do as an MP and advance the issues that matter to all of us. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. And I look forward to seeing a continued success of the empowerment of women through your program.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful having you with us. I also wanted to mention that in its beginnings, this at this conference, it was born from conversations of women, and we had it has always been a joint effort between the Canadian Hispanic Congress and the Consulate of Ecuador in Toronto. And we have had, this began with a wonderful woman, Carmita Valdivieso, and this was an idea that took hold, and it has us each year looking forward to this, to these meetings, these opportunities to discuss the ways in which we can lighten the load of women as they work towards a more fair and equitable treatment within our society. And I just didn't want to forget to mention that it is always a pleasure for us to work with other organizations that have helped us and with whose cooperation this is a success, has become a success. I want to say that I'm especially thankful to our friends in the press and in our community whose support drives us and inspires us. The work of the Canadian Hispanic Congress is all about our community. Thank you, friends, for honoring us with your visit. Thank you for your support, and let us do this again soon. Thank you so much.
Ahora les pedimos a todos prender su cámara para tomar una fotografía. Muchas gracias a todos y cada uno por su participación y les deseamos una feliz tarde.
Gracias, hasta luego.
Gracias, un placer.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Una feliz tarde. Un millón de
Hasta luego,
gracias.
que pasen muy bien.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Monique. Gracias.
Gracias, Charito.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes a todos. Eddie, felicidades. Y Carlos, como siempre, te has lucido. Muchísimas gracias por todo. Gracias. Soraya, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Felicidades.
Muchas gracias, Monique. Un honor.
Gracias.